Hello everybody, welcome back to Chicken Bros Cosplays. Today I'll be showing you guys how I built my Miss Delight cosplay. Now this video is partly a tutorial and also partly you guys watching me struggle as I mess up over and over again trying to build this cosplay. But hey, we'll take you guys through it A to Z, so without further ado, let's get started. Alright, to begin I started off by drafting out a blueprints to kind of get the costume scaled to my body. From there I went ahead and purchased everything I would need for the project, starting with this baseball helmet. This red polka dotted dress I got off of Amazon. These 3 cosplay wigs. 3 red bow ties I'm going to use on her shoes and her head. A plastic Christmas tree ornament that's see-through for her eyes. A black morph mask with a zipper on the back. And some lace I got to fill in the trim on her shirt around her collar and her sleeves. I also went ahead and got a hoop skirt in order to fill the volume of her dress. I found this one that had a bunch of ruffles in it, hoping it would hide the hoops so they wouldn't poke out the sides of the dress so much. Next I got a small black pair of shorts to wear underneath the dress. A skin tone stretchy shirt. A skin tone pair of tights. A yellow shirt I found at a thrift store. This blue overall top thing. A pair of mesh gloves, and lastly a red tie. Now to get started building. So first thing I did was I measured out my head and scaled to the head of the costume to make sure I got the proportions correct. Now her face will be made out of EVA foam. I got 2 rolls of this from Michaels. I got some 12mm and some 8mm. From there I rolled the foam out flat and drafted out my first pattern. I was especially careful to make sure I measured everything out properly in order to make sure her face was the right shape. From there I went ahead and cut the oval out and then cut it into 4 separate pieces to be taped / glued back together. Now here is where I made my first mistake, because after I finished cutting them out, I taped them together and I ended up with this. It didn't look remotely like a face, more like a belated beak mountain hill thing. It just did not work at all. I tried cutting it around it to try to save it, but in the end it just was not working. So I tossed it and started over. This time around I went ahead and went for a simplified, flatter design, which ended up working out a ton better. Now that I had something that resembled her lower face, I was finally ready to move on to the upper part of her head. Now the process for crafting this part was more or less the same as crafting the lower part of the head. Next, I went ahead and joined the 2 halves together and added a little grafter underneath the chin to fill things in nicely, and over on the sides as well. And overall, I had something that kind of crudely looked like her face, and we're ready to move on to the more finer details. Here I went ahead and traced out her face with a pencil, and then proceeded to cut out her mouth and then glue in a false set of teeth behind in order to give her teeth and mouth a bit more depth. Now she was really starting to take shape at this point and really looked like Miss Delight. Next I cut out her mouth and eyes and dremeled around the edges of the mask to give it a nice, smooth, finished effect. Next I crafted her nose using a couple of pieces of EVA foam. Then lined it up onto her mouthpiece, like so. Miss Delight also had this big scar on her forehead, so I created that by cutting out the hole for the scar and putting a little graft of foam on the back in order to fill it in. Next, it was time to spray paint, so I went ahead and sprayed down her both her face pieces, and it turned out pretty good. Using some wood, I went ahead and I created a framework on top of the baseball helmet. This framework will be the main support structure that will hold Miss Delight's face and hair onto the head. The face piece was glued on to 2 points onto a wood beam via contact cement. Once I had the faceplate glued onto the wood frame, I went ahead and gave the head a very first test wear, and I'm pretty pleased with the results. Next, I went ahead and cut out the Christmas ornament pieces to the correct size, and then took some furniture pads and glued them onto the back in order to create her pupils. And with a bit of spray paint on the back sides, I ended up with these nice glossy looking realistic eyes inspired off of Director Sauce's tutorial on how he builds eyes for his FNAF costumes. It honestly kind of freaked me out the first time I glued her eyes in. Very realistic. You know, the effect was good. Using some LED string lights, I went ahead and glued them onto the back side of the mask and on the back side of the eyes in order to give her eyes that nice glowing effect they have in the game. Next, it was time for her upper jaw. I went ahead and smithed that out of some EVA foam, held together some contact cement, and used a Dremel to give her gums a nice teethy look. After painting her gums, I went ahead and did a first full suit up of everything I had thus far, and honestly, it was looking great. Well, all except for one problem though. Her head was too big. Despite all my careful measurements in the beginning, in order to ensure that her head was proportionally correct, I forgot to put size into consideration and ended up making her head just too big and bobble-headed. So I got to start over and rebuild her entire head from scratch. Now, I didn't bother documenting this part because it's more or less the exact same thing as I did with the first head, just on a smaller scale. Though I did make her forehead a bit too small in the second attempt, so I had to put a little graft into the forehead in order to get it up to the proper length, which ended up turning out well. Now it was time to build her moving jaw mechanism. I initially went for a traditional approach to making this, but it ended up failing due to my own poor engineering. So I went with a newer improved version that was a bit more rigid, and it had little button snaps that actually connected directly to the button snaps that are already on the baseball helmet, which worked out quite nicely. From here, I went ahead and smithed her lower jaw out of EVA foam. I went ahead and got the dog attached. Next came her teeth, and after I finished cutting out and drumming these things and painting them all together, I ended up with a really cool looking result. Coming back to her mouthpiece, I went ahead and installed some small magnets onto the bottom of her faceplate and on top of the mouthpiece in order to get to magnetize them loosely like so that I can create a cool jump scare effect. Now, to quite literally flesh out the inside of her mouth, I created these nice foam grafts in order to create kind of a cool fleshy texture on the inside of her face. Now finally came the fun part. I got to go ahead and paint all the details into her mouth and face, and this is when she truly just came to life in a horrifyingly awesome way. From this point forward, I started having a hard time sleeping at night. Now we move into the final phase of her head's construction, that being her wig. So, using several blocks and pieces of upholstery foam, I went ahead and contacted cemented them together to form the base shape of what will become her wig. From here, I just continued to slowly flesh it out by adding on several more layers, getting it more to the proper shape of the wig will finally be in. Once I was satisfied with the overall shape of the foam base wigs, I went ahead and took them outside and threw some spray paint on them to get them to the right base color. From here I went ahead and pulled out the blonde wigs and began to layer them onto the foam base in order to create the outer layer of her wig. I used a process called teasing. That's when basically you kind of reverse comb up onto the wigs in order to give this nice ruffled, frazzled effect. But I quickly became bothered by how blocky and square shaped the overall wig was, so I went ahead and I decided to start over and build a new one. This new wig was much better well-rounded and far more accurate to the original character's design. And with their head done, it was finally time to move on to the rest of the body. So I went ahead and I cut up and hemmed up the yellow shirt to get started. And from there I went ahead and I frayed up the edges of the sleeves and got them all nice and cut up. I also went ahead and painted a lot of black paint over a lot of the clothing items to give them that nice scuffed up worn effect. Now when it comes to overalls, I unfortunately did not record any footage of me actually creating a little apple and the effect on there. That's made out of a bit of a felt. And other than that, yeah, I went ahead and I sewed the lace onto the cuffs, scuffed it all up, and made a very, very cool looking top. Now moving back to our dress, I went ahead and I cut up the base of it. Then I went ahead and sewed together her waist scarf. And with that, the costume was just about done and looking really awesome. All that was left was to build her feet and Barb. Here I cut out some wood blocks and attached some stilt pads to the bottom of them for support. Now it's time for my biggest mistake yet. I attached, yes, stiletto heels onto the wood blocks. I initially wanted to do this in order to give her more of an accurate ankle, but in the end it was incredibly stupid and dangerous even, which you can see here in a bit. But in the meantime I went out ahead and I sculpted out her feet, which did turn out really, really good. Now after I had completed the whole costume and we were actually filming Miss Delight's reveal, I was walking in these shoes and I ended up about nearly rolling my ankle here after a failure, which you're about to see here in just a second.
Oh no. Oh, frick.
Yeah, the entire sole ripped right off the entire boot on the left foot. And thank goodness I fell safely, did not hurt or roll anything, but really, really dangerous. So remember kids, do not attach stilettos to wooden blocks, like that. Lesson learned. Afterwards I ended up just attaching a normal pair of shoes to the wooden blocks, which worked a lot better. Anywho, now let's get on to the final bit here. That is Barb. This was actually the funnest and simplest part of the whole process, honestly. It was just I glue a yardstick into a foam ball, get some pencils, paint them the right colors, and then from there I went ahead and just hot glued them all into place, and Barb came together really, really, really quick. It was honestly a very enjoyable process. And with Barb done, the costume was finally completed.
I'm coming closer. I will catch you.
Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and if you guys enjoyed what you saw today, be sure to like and subscribe for more content in the future. And until then, see you later.